Personally, I find the letters in ATX to be very frustrating, and I spend way too much time with them during tax season. Partly that's because I've highly customized my letters because I want them to look nice. And partly it's because letters are a very hidden part of ATX. There's no one place you can go and see every paragraph of every letter so you can change it to what the wording that you want. You have to come up with various scenarios for a client to bring up the different parts of the letter so that you can edit them. When you're in Return Manager and go to Preferences, Client Communications, you have a lot of preferences here for letters. You can choose which letters to add, which cover sheets to add. You can choose to combine the letters, estimate letters, state and local letters. You can choose your default font. Although I find that while that's great and it works most of the time, a lot of times I'll start typing and it'll be in the wrong font. So I've got to manually change the font in the letter. You can choose the wording, your preferred pronoun, whether the letter will say the return is to be e-filed. And you can choose, check and uncheck various bits of the letter that you don't want. Like, I don't want the client's name and address on there. The salutation is fine. I like to try and keep my letters short onto one page as much as possible. So there's a client communication manager that is pretty useless under Tools and Return Manager. I say useless because it only shows your template letters, and there's a whole section of variables over here that is not even available to you to add to these letters. So I never go in here, but I wanted to show it to you. You have to go into a client to get the letters. That's kind of odd, I think. When you're in here and you edit the formatting of a letter, all of your letters are listed down the left side. Here are all your variables over here. Now, when you're working with letters, it's probably better off to start with them not all combined so that you're dealing with each individual letter. Because if I make a change up here in the federal section and I want to save that for all future returns, it's also going to save the state letter down there, and I might not want that. There are several differences between the client letters and the template letters. When you're in a template letter, you can choose between any of the sets of variables for the forms that are in that particular client. But when you're in a client letter, you can only see the variables for the section that you're in. So if I scroll down to the state section here, you see it switches to the state variables. Another big difference is under the templates menu, there's import and export. Well, on client letters, there's no way to export them. On the template letters, the export is available. The way I get around not being able to export these client letters is I put the cursor in the letter and choose Select All and simply copy, and I'm going to run WordPad and paste it in. When you do this, you'll save it as an RTF, rich text format file, and save it wherever you want. Now, I don't normally import client letters. I do at the beginning of the year when I'm setting up the tax software. I do import all these custom letters that I've made myself. But when you're in a client letter like this, you see these little section symbols. And when I copy and paste parts of the letters back in, I'm going to be doing it between two of those section markers. You can't highlight more than a section letter unless you choose the Select All. So after I've copied and pasted that out, and I find a letter is messed up, I can copy and paste in between those section markers Now sometimes the paragraph will have a section marker in the middle of it and you've got to do bits and pieces, but that's just the way it is. You can also back up your letters as part of the setup data in ATX, and I highly recommend you do that. We're just going to switch back to the Return Manager and go to the Returns menu, Backup. And I've already got setup data checked. Your setup data is your preferences, your security manager settings, your print packet settings, custom letters, customized master forms, and a few other things. So you check that and click Backup. The problem with this is that when you restore, you don't get to pick and choose. You have to restore all your setup data. So even though I recommend backing this up, that would only be if you're moving ATX to a brand new machine, installing from scratch, and you want to save some time on all of your setup. You just restore all of your backup, all of your setup data here, including the letters. The variables on the right-hand side, the user's manual tells you to drag and drop them into the letter, and it doesn't give you any option. But I had difficulty with that. I end up getting the wrong variable, even though I dragged it very carefully. Sometimes it's the wrong variable, so I think that's a bug in ATX. So what I do now is I just place the cursor where I want in the letter and double-click on any variable. And you can hover over these variables when they're in your letter to make sure that they're saying, what you want them to say. I've noticed that some sections of the letters have more than one version of them. So let's look at the federal estimate letter, which you can see I've highly formatted. This particular letter, since it's after April the 15th, I've told it I just need to make 3 estimated payments, and we've doubled up the June one here. And that 0, the variable won't display a 0. It'll display any dollar amount except 0. So I've had to type this 0 in here. So if I go and change this return, go back to 1040 ES, and change the options. So instead of saying 3 payments, I'm going to say 4 payments. And we go back to the letter and edit the formatting. You can see that that 0 and $sign that I typed is not there. That means there is at least 2 different versions of this section of the letter. And I suspected that for quite some time, but only recently was able to prove it. So when I'm editing my letters, I have to go into this test client and switch it around to having a balance due or getting a refund. Let's say they paid $15,000 here with an extension, and so now they're in a refund situation. So this section of the letter is totally changed. And this is the kind of stuff I'm always having to go in and edit. The formatting just doesn't work out the way I want when the sections of the letters change. You have a choice to save it for just this return or save it for all future returns. You really want to stay away from saving it for all future returns, except for when you're getting your letters all set up at the beginning of the year. Because I've probably already fixed that formatting error. This particular client, I added this letter. It was a much earlier version of the letter. And ATX does not update the letters when you reopen the client like it does update the forms if you've changed the letters. So you can customize this letter for this particular client, and it'll be that way next year when you roll the client over. This is particularly useful for the engagement letter if it's a client that's out of state or maybe multiple states. You could come in here and edit this and change it to Delaware and whatever the Delaware form number is, and save that. And then if you roll over these letters, it'll be part of the tax return for next year. Most of the letter, you're in full justify, so it's nice and flat on each side of the paragraphs. But if you want to do something like I've done with the estimate letters, that full justify will drive you nuts. So I came in here to this and switched it to left justify so that it's easier for me to get the spacing lined up in columns. This particular word processor does not have any type of left tab, right tab. You just have to come in here with spaces and space things around so that they look all right. And when the amounts change, I'm always in here adding spaces, deleting spaces to make it line up. If you find that the letter is not in the order that you want the various sections, you go into letter options, and in here is where you can check and uncheck the combining of the client and estimate letters, the federal and state letters, and choose the wording. Down here, if you wanted this federal estimate to be after the federal letter instead of after the Maryland letter, you just use these and move them around, and you can see, okay, all the federals up top and all the Marylands down the bottom. Now, I don't like it that way. I like all the current year stuff first, and then all the estimates together at the bottom. Going back to the letter here, well, let's get into the edit formatting section. Let me drag this over and show you. These are the 72 letters that I have copied and pasted into a RTF file. And the reason for that is that you can have federal with balance due and paper file, and federal with balance due direct debit. All different kinds of scenarios here. No tax, refund, direct deposit partially applied. And what I'll do is if, let's see, which letter is this? This is a federal refund. I needed to change, say, this bolded paragraph. I would triple click on that, highlight it, copy it, and go back over here into ATX and double click, highlight what I want to replace, and then just paste that section in. The only other thing that I want to talk about in letters, when I go to print, sometimes the letters just aren't there in the print packets. I'm not sure why that happens. It doesn't happen very often. You can see in the client documents, none of the letters are there. Let's look at the client print packet. We got the cover sheet. Yeah, we've got the letters there, but not in the preparer one. So I'm just going to close this client and open it back up again. And now if we go to print, the letters are there. I'm glad I was able to show you that in real time. That's all I have for now. If you have any questions that you would like answered, you can leave some comments below, and I will get back to you.